Hello everybody, welcome to Code Train Bootcamp, P5.js. We're going to get into a really complicated concept. It's one that I don't teach students for quite a while, but it's helpful for teachers to at least be exposed to this early. And that is how to create kind of your own advanced custom functions. In an earlier video, we did talk about the basics of creating a custom function. Now we're going to talk about a lot more complicated ones. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a little program that has that moves the square. We're going to kind of just show it's a very simplistic idea, but one that should be easier for you to understand. The idea is that I've got some code right now that allows me to move my square with the A and the D key. So what I've done is I've created a square x variable. You notice there's a game over variable. I'm going to use that a little bit later. So I've created a square x at 300, and I've drawn a rectangle at square x. You'll notice I've got this game over. I'm gonna ask you to ignore that for a minute. I'm gonna do that at the end. Work with game over, and that's what this variable at the top is. And then I have my key press function. You've seen this type of function before, where I set the letters A. I'm gonna minus from x if the key is D. I'm gonna plus. So that's how it. Whoops. That's how it works. Okay, now what we're going to do though is we're going to create a function that's going to take care of the movement of this thing for us. So rather than square x minus 5 minus equals 5, we're going to add more and more complexity to a function that's going to allow us to do this. And you're going to maybe ask yourself, well, why am I going to do this when I could just do square x minus equals 5? Please be aware I'm doing this just to kind of show, to prove a point, and eventually I'm going to add game over into this key press function as well, so you can see that how this can get more and more complicated as we progress. So for sure, what I'm about to show you could be accomplished more simply, but I want to do something with an example that's really easy for you to understand. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create our own custom function called move. So function move, and I'm just going to start off as an empty function for a second. Now, what we want to do is we want this to take care of the direction that we want to move. What I want to do is I want to get rid of the square x minus equals 5 and say move. What I want to do though is I need to tell it, I need to figure out first of all how fast we're going to move, and secondly I want to tell it what direction we want to move. So I'm going to add more functionality to this as we progress. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable called speed. And if you're going to set a variable up inside a function, so this speed variable, because I put it inside the brackets here, it's going to automatically create this variable for me that is only visible or only used inside moves. You'll see what I mean by that in just a second. So what I'm going to do here is I'm simply going to say square x, and this won't make sense to actually see how I call it this function in a second, plus equals speed. Okay? Now, that's the entire function for the moment. So what I'm going to do here is when I press A, instead of calling square x minus equals 5, I'm going to do something else. All right, so when you write a function like this, the terminology that's used is called declaring a function. So this is where we set up this function. So we got a function called move that we made ourselves. It's going to take in an extra variable you're going to see in a minute called speed. Now, this variable is called a parameter, or sometimes called an argument. Here's how this works. Back in my key press function, what I'm now going to say is for A, it's move, and I'm going to pass in -5. So the term is passing in a parameter. So the reason it's -5 is you notice I said plus equals speed. So I want it to go left, so I'm going to subtract. For this one, it's move 5. So this number is called the parameter you pass in, and technically, I believe on the inside, the variable that's called an argument. So inside the function, I'm going to make reference to whatever number this is as the variable speed. So if I hit play and run it, you'll see that it goes 5. If I make this quite a bit faster, say I go 15 to the left, but I'll stick 5 to the right. Now I can go really fast, but to the left I'm still going in pretty small jumps. There's really fast, really small jumps. So you can see that no matter what I've done here, it can it can affect whatever's in here by creating a parameter. So that's the one thing we could do. The second thing we could do though is we could actually also pass in a direction if we wanted. So, and we might do this if we want all four directions as opposed to just positive, negative. So let's say, now this one of course we're only doing left to right, so I'm just going to create a second variable called direction. And then in here, what I would need is I would need my if statements to talk about what direction this would be. But what I'm going to do for this is I'm just going to pass in the numbers -1 or +1, and just so you can see go left or right. Now, again, this is kind of a little bit of not really that you wouldn't do it this way, but you can get the idea of how this could work. So the idea is I now say I want to go 5, comma, -1 for that direction, and 5, 1 for that direction. And then what I'd have to do here is I'd have to say plus equals speed times direction, right? So it makes it negative. Now, if I was going to do the 4 directions, say the 4 compass directions, I would probably need to have an if statement that says, instead of passing in -1 or 1, I'd pass in left, right, up, down. And I'd say if left, we're going to affect the x variable, if y, if down, we're going to fix the y variable and things like that. Let's see if I got that right without any errors. Yeah, there we go. So there's going negative for my A key. Now I'm pressing my D key. So again, it's going properly. And again, I could change this. And of course, this could be a variable in key press that's affected by maybe we have a gas pedal that makes it go faster or slower. So here is the basic idea of the first kind of more complex version of a function is to pass in these things called parameters. So parameter is a new variable that it's called local scope. They'll only exist inside this. If I was trying to make a reference to, let's say, speed anywhere else in the program, let's say I wanted to print speed somewhere. So I say the speed variable, and I want to print it wherever it's going to give me an error there. So it can't find speed is not defined up here. So wait a minute, that variable is defined. Well, it exists down here, but no, it only exists inside the function if you declare it inside a function. So we've declared this variable inside this function by putting inside these brackets here, so it's only available inside that function as well. So that's the first major concept, the idea of parameters, also known as arguments. There's a technical difference from a computer science perspective, but usually I just use the word parameters with my students and make them aware of the word argument as being these variables that get passed in. Again, for those of you that have been through my series the whole time, we talk about using this in processing. In processing, we would have to declare what type of variable this is. So if these are going to be integers, I have to say int speed, comma, int direction. If they are going to be a different type of variable, I'd have to declare the variable type there as well. Now, the last thing I want to do with this is what's called a return value. So the return value is when a function does something and sends information back to where it's called. So what I want to do with this is I want to update this game over variable if I reach the edges of my screen. Again, kind of an arbitrary little example, but the idea is maybe I'm zooming around and I want to make sure I avoid things. If I touch the edge of the screen, I die. End of game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say in move that if my variable gets too low, if my x variable gets past 0, I'm going to trigger this game over. And here's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to say if square x, and again, this is sort of an arbitrary thing, but just to give you an idea of how this works. The key word you use is called return. So I'm going to return true. Now what true means is going to return the word true. You're going to see in a minute I'm going to use this game over variable, which I originally set to false. So I'm going to change it to be true here using this return. Okay? So now what I'm going to say is I'm going to say move, but I'm going to say game over equals move. So what happens is that if square is less than 0, it's going to return true. I'll repeat that here. And I'm going to say else if square x is greater than the far side of my screen, Paste that in. So now if square x is greater than, I think I'm at 600, I might want to have a little bit of space for my 50 pixels wide. We're going to also return true, as in it is game over. And then else, we need to return something. We're going to return false. So every time we press the key, it's going to move. It's going to check this, and if we reach, it's going to do this thing called return. So notice that if you're going to return a value, you have to do something with that value you return. So I've saved it into my game over variable. And notice up here it says that if game over is equal to true, text you lose. Let's see if this actually works. So again, if I press my A key, I move to the right and left. Doesn't seem to have any necessary serious effect. But if I go over too far, should make my speed a little bit faster. One of the nice things about working with processing is it allows you to hold your key down. It doesn't in this. And if I get over 50, 650, nothing happened. So I made a mistake. So let me, oh, there we go, there it goes. I just went too high. So there's my you lose. If I go back, it disappears. So if I go all the way back and see if I can do that. Okay, hold on, this is really annoying. Let's make this go way faster. So I go and I reach my edge because I just less than 0, you lose. If I'm between those, I'm good. And if I go past 650, you lose. I must add, do I have greater than 650? Is my screen greater than 650? Oh, great, 600. So that's why. And so you lose. So there you go. So that's kind of the second big concept of more complex functions. And really, you don't need to know this right at the beginning with your students. I don't show them this for quite a while, but this gives you a bit of an idea for teachers, what's going to happen coming down the pipes. So what are the key concepts? The key concepts are you can write a function that uses no parameters. I showed you that in a earlier video. You can write a function that has one or more parameters, which are variables that data gets passed in, and or you can have return values which get saved or used back where that function is called. So remember that this is termed calling a function. This is termed declaring a function. So where it's called is there, and so we save the result. In this case, I saved it into a game over variable. It can be used in lots of different ways. So there you go. There's your crash course in custom functions. Add parameters, add return values, use as useful. You can write as many custom functions as you want. They can be 1 line or 10,000 lines of code each, and they can make your bigger programs way more efficient. All right, thanks everybody.